Hi everyone, my name is Max Schnarl and welcome to Draw My Myth. When I was a kid, I got my hands on a collection of Greek myths and I want to share with you one that I remember particularly well to this day. The story of Tithonus is a good one, although not that well known. It is a tale of love and of heartbreak, but on a much more permanent and depressing scale than most that we know about. Now, before we get to Tithonus, let me give you some background. It begins like this. Long ago, the goddess of the dawn, called Eos, fell in love with Ares, the god of war. Like so many others, he could not resist the beauty of Eos, despite his relations to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. So when Aphrodite heard news of Ares' love, she did what gods tend to do and casts a curse on Eos. The goddess of the dawn would never stop falling in love. Now, there are only so many gods, and after a while, Eos fell in love with mortal men. This fate never ended well for goddesses, for mortal men do not live forever as goddesses do. One such mortal was named Tithonus. Tithonus was a proud young man and a prince of Troy. Handsome and brave, the moment Eos saw him, she fell deeply in love. Which doesn't say much considering her predicament, but of course, this time she decided she must carry him away with her. So, she brought him to her palace far away from Troy. Tithonus and Eos lived together happily. They had 2 sons who also became famous among men and gods alike. All seemed well, but as time passed, Eos began to mourn the future. She could not imagine a life without her love, so she asked Zeus, the greatest god of all, to grant Tithonus immortality. Her eyes filled with tears, her skin flushed, and Zeus was so moved that he granted her request. So now Tithonus was immortal, and so they all lived happily ever after at the end, right? No, they didn't. You see, Tithonus would live forever, but even Zeus did not have the power to make him a god. And so, as time passed, Tithonus, like all mortals, began to age. First, wrinkles on his forehead, then his muscles began to grow weak, his arms and legs grew slender, his hair grew gray and thin. Even the light of his beloved Eos no longer gave him the strength it once had. When Eos understood Tithonus' fate, the sight of him made her so distraught that she couldn't bear to look at him. So she left him alone and traveled, falling in love with others. Eos fell in love with other mortal men and other gods, and when she returned to Tithonus, she would see her once handsome beloved withering away. Day after day, he grew older. Like a shadow, he roamed silent palaces of the gods of the east, thinking of long ago days, remembering Eos' wish for his immortality and ashamed of his desire for it. He begged Eos to return his mortality. He begged and sang to the other gods, pleading for them to let him die, but they could not grant him his request. He sang and sang until Eos could bear it no longer, and so she used her powers to transform this shell of a man into a cicada. She watched as he emerged from the ground, his body pale but fresh as he shed his old skin, wings spreading where once there were arms, and that voice, singing on and on and on. Now, there are a few alternative endings to this. The version I read as a kid had Tithonus turn into a grasshopper instead of a cicada, but that's probably because the collection was designed for dumb kids like me who had no idea what a cicada was. A more significant difference would be Eos locking the age-crippled Tithonus in a room to suffer alone for all eternity. Yeah, I know, fun stuff. So, there's a seemingly obvious message to take from this story. Be careful what you wish for. But I got that message loud and clear from Snow White, like most others. So that message isn't the one I got from this story as a 4th grader, and it certainly isn't the one I hope everybody watching this video got. You see, the message that little 9-year-old me got from this is that we mortals don't live forever. No matter what we do or how much we pray, one day we will all pass on. Dark for a kid in elementary school, I know, but there is a bright side, and I'll get to that later. However, I think the optimistic side of the story might be made a little more clear in a translation where gods or immortality aren't even involved. Let me give it a shot. Yvette is a professor at UCSC. Yvette's profession is no surprise, largely because both of her parents and her parents' parents all happen to be professors at UCSC. Strange, right? Never mind. Now, Yvette has been single for a long time, largely because she feels pressure from her elders to marry another UCSC professor, but as such scenarios tend to work out in stories, Yvette didn't want to. After all, there are only so many UCSC professors to choose from that aren't either seeing somebody or related to her. Tired of being single, however, Yvette decided to venture into an area rarely explored by her family, downtown Santa Cruz. And that of course, is where she ran into Timothy. Although Timothy was quite intelligent and hardworking, Timothy was unemployed at the moment and going door to door at shops downtown for anyone to hire him when he ran into Yvette. Yvette asked him to join her for a romantic dinner at Cowell Dining Hall, and Timothy, struck by her beauty and aura of importance, accepted. It was at the Cowell Dining Hall, however, that Yvette learned of Timothy's predicament. Yvette knew that her parents would never approve of her dating Timothy, but she saw a way forward. Filled with love and determination, she went to the Chancellor's home and, with tears streaming down her face, begged the Chancellor to give Timothy a permanent job as a UCSC professor. The Chancellor, Zach, was not only a good family friend to Yvette's, but he had heard of how hard a worker Timothy was. Moved by her emotion, Zach granted her request. At first, Yvette and Timothy were ecstatic by their good fortune, but it wasn't long until they realized Yvette's mistake. As Timothy entered his first class, he had the epiphany that he had absolutely no idea how to teach, much less the topic about which he was teaching. You see, while Yvette asked for Timothy to have a permanent job as a UCSC professor, she forgot to ask Zach to grant him the knowledge needed for such a profession. Every day, Timothy had to endure complaints from students, ridicule from his peers, and terrible reviews on Rate My Professor. Soon, students no longer enrolled in his class. He wanted to quit, but he felt as if he couldn't because it was the only way he could stay with Yvette. So, one day, when Yvette couldn't stand to see him suffer any longer, she turned him into a grasshopper. I'm kidding, but she did have to watch as Timothy unhappily struggled through a life that to him was unfulfilling and unfitting forever. The end. Now, before anyone else says it, yeah, I know, I'm great at making up names, but that's not the point. But what's the big difference here? Although the story has been completely modernized, the overall tale type holds relatively true. A powerful woman falls in love with a lowly man and begs a higher-order person to grant said lowly man with equal power to hers. However, the man is simply not made to live with such a gift and withers with it. But that is where the story changes. See, in the original story, Tithonus has to suffer for all of eternity, hardly a problem that us mortals can relate to. But the version I wrote portrays Timothy, who is well known for being a hard worker, simply put into a profession that doesn't suit him, and he has to suffer in a way much more relatable to the average person. And this, folks, is where that silver lining comes in. The moral of Tithonus isn't all about avoiding people with tempting offers, nor is it about remembering that we're all doomed. Rather, it is a reminder to enjoy ourselves while we're alive. It is a reminder that we don't just come to college to torture ourselves with essays and finals, but also to discover new things. In the words of Confucius, choose a job you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life. The life of a professor was not suited for Timothy, nor was immortality truly meant for Tithonus. To me and to all my fellow scholars enduring the crucible that is university, the story of Tithonus is a reminder that college isn't all about getting the best grades you can, nor is it even really about the degree. Rather, it is an amazing opportunity to find something you love so much that you are more than willing to do it for the rest of your life, of your eternity. Although there will likely be pressures from people we love the most, just as Timothy and Tithonus experienced, in the end, it is up to us and us alone to decide how our lives will play out, so that when the hour comes for us to pass on from this life to the next, we will have no regrets. That's the end, and thank you for watching.